Hello, 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 hello. Hello. Hello, 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 hello.
Share the microphone when you have time. Okay, we start. So good morning, everyone. To those joining online and those in our WWF Pavilion audience, welcome to this one-hour session on Indigenous peoples and local communities, their solutions for climate, nature, and people. Today we have with us 4 esteemed panelists who will share their stories, insights, and expertise on how they are strengthening their biocultural systems and addressing climate change. My name is Tracy Liu, and I work for the WWF International Governance Practice in WWF Canada, based in Toronto. Toronto is located in the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Before introducing our guests today, I would like to briefly provide some context for today's session. This session was brought together through the focus of the WWF Governance Practice on Inclusive Conservation, an initiative that looks further to support and strengthen Indigenous peoples and local communities in the self-strengthening and safeguarding of their land and territories of life. Indigenous peoples and local communities protect over 80% of the world's biodiversity, yet less than 20% of their territories are formally recognized as their own. Indigenous people and local communities are key enablers for any solutions related to the challenges that we are facing globally with our climate and in nature, and indeed, they have already made lasting contributions to the fields of climate resilience, mitigation, and adaptation. The People Protecting Landscapes and Seascapes initiative aims to support the work of Indigenous peoples and local communities by starting to support with 15 pilot WWF offices in specific landscapes and seascapes within the 4 pillars of rights and responsibilities, governance, economies, and culture. Our panelists today come from 4 of the 15 PPLS early starter pilot countries that have expressed interest in this initiative. We hope by hearing their stories today, we can also gain inspiration and insight on how to further strengthen the inclusive conservation approach, working together to address the complex and urgent challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss, and also building equity, empowerment, and resilience. The knowledge, expertise, and solutions that our panelists will share with us today may also serve as insights for the UNFCCC's Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples platform, where several of our panelists have been engaged over the past week. Before turning to our panel discussion, I would like to highlight our format for today and some housekeeping matters. We will have 2 rounds of questions and exchange for our panelists, and I would ask that the audience keep their questions in mind so that, time permitting, we can also open the floor at the end for discussion. In participating in the session today, kindly note that for safety reasons, we will not be referring to the political context of the session. Please bear this in mind when framing your questions. Interpretation is available today for our in-person audience, so for those of you who are here and are in need of a headset, either for French or Spanish, please feel free to pick one up on the side. For those interested participants who could not join us in person today, we appreciate you tuning in to view today's online session, both during and after the event. So I'm now happy to introduce our speakers for today. We have first Ms. Cressida Kuala. She is the mother of 4 beautiful children from the Indigenous Ipili people of the Porgera district in the Enga province of Papua New Guinea. She is the founder and CEO of Porgera Red Wara River Women's Association Incorporated, which looks at social welfare issues of subsistence livelihood, women and young girls in mine-affected local communities. So welcome, Cressida. We also have with us today Mr. Henry Rakotoson. He is the Vice President of the Tafo Milhavo Network of Communities Managing Natural Resources, and he is the focal point to the Malagasy ICCA Consortium. Mr. Rakotoson is the co-coordinator of APACS in Madagascar and the ICCCA consortium members. From 2002 to 2015, he was the president of the Fokatani Ambokitsohina Andranobi. From 2004 to 2022, he is the president of the Voi Tamia, which manages Lake Andranobi. From 2007 to 2022, he is the president of the Parents Association at the Ambokitsohina Public Primary School. And from 2008 to 2018, he was the president of the Fifumpava Vakina Karatara Cooperative. From 2016 to 2020 to 2018, he was the municipal councillor of the Ansirabi Urban, From 2018 to 2022, he is now the coordinator of the Fifumpara Cooperative. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Henri. Next, we have Mr. Sa'e Kuda. He is a program officer representing the Promotion of Indigenous and Nature Together, Point, Myanmar. Mr. Kuda is from the Karen Indigenous Peoples of Myanmar, and he has been engaging with livelihood affairs for Indigenous communities, as well as working for media engagement and communications on the ground level and keeping in touch with Indigenous communities. Very nice to have you here today with us, Mr. Kuda. Lastly, but not leastly, we have Mr. Jose Gregorio Diaz Mirabal. He is the general coordinator of the Indigenous Organizations of the Amazon Basin, or COICA. He is originally from the Guaranama peoples in the Venezuelan Amazon. He is an Indigenous leader of the Wakukuenai Kulipaco, and he has been fighting for the defense of the Amazon and its peoples from a young age, as the Amazon faces the reality of a point of no return. At the 10th COICA Congress, he was elected as the General Coordinator for 2018 to 2022. In this capacity, he leads 9 Amazonian countries and has represented his peoples before the Synod in Rome, at the Madrid Climate Conference, and as a spokesperson before the Scientific Panel for the Amazon. So welcome, Mr. Gregorio. So thank you for making the time to speak with us all today. I would go to the first question and pose first to Ms. Cressida Koala. Could you please share with us your insights on how you are building climate resilience, mitigation, and strengthening biocultural systems in your community? What synergies and best practices can you share, for example, that might feed into the work of the Local Communities Indigenous Peoples Platform? Cressida, please, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone, people of the world. Thank you, WWF, for inviting me to speak today. I am an Indigenous Ipupi woman from the mountainous. I am an Indigenous Ipupi woman from the mountainous islands of the South Pacific country of Papua New Guinea. My country is the largest in the Pacific Southwest. It is made up of one largest island and more than 600 smaller ones. Like my brothers and sisters in other South Pacific countries, we are already suffering the consequences of climate change. Our islands are severely threatened by seawater rise. Sea levels in Papua New Guinea have risen by 7 millimeters per year since 1993, more than double the global average. Our Carteret Islands were the first Pacific islands where environmental refugees had to be relocated because of sea level rise dating back to the 1980s. With less than 500,000 square kilometers in size, my country has 7% of the world's known biodiversity, which is also at risk as temperatures rise. Our wetlands dry up and our rivers flood the land. Many of our people struggle with poverty. PNG ranked 155 out of the 189 countries surveyed by the United Nations Development Program in 2020 in terms of human development. But PNG is also very rich in natural resources that are mainly plundered from our country by global north multinationals. We are the perfect example of what is called the resource scarce, a development country whose economy and government has become overly dependent on exploitation of our natural resources to the point that this actually deepens poverty and destroys the very environment we rely on for life. Papua New Guinea has all of the very worst mining practices on earth. I live in the shadow of Canadian Barrick Gold's Porgera joint venture gold mine. This mine makes no attempt to contain its waste. The mine's tailings are piped into a nearby river, and from there they flow from then 800 kilometers through one of our biggest river systems from the mountains, islands to the sea. Barrick calls this river and tailings disposal, but in Barrick's own country of Canada, this would be illegal. In the face of climate change, fresh water is more precious than gold and should not be contaminated by mine waste. Also in my country, we have large industrial mines on our small islands that dump their tailings into the river oceans through a submerged pipe. The mining companies call this submarine tailings disposal, but it is illegal in developed countries such as Canada and Australia. What will happen to these mines and all their toxic waste as sea level rise? Finally, Papua New Guinea has the dubious distinction of being the first country on earth to grant a permit to a Canadian company, Nautilus, to mine our deep water hydrothermal vents. These vents are biodiversity hotspots in deep ocean. Although Nautilus went bankrupt, another company has bought the claims and still wants to destroy marine life in our Bismarck Sea by mining our seabed. The government of Papua New Guinea needs to protect our precious water that sustains our life and ban so-called river and tailings disposal. The government of Papua New Guinea needs to protect our precious marine environment that feeds us and provides a livelihood to our people and ban the dumping of mine tailings in the sea. And the government of Papua New Guinea needs to join the courageous Pacific Island countries such as Palau, Fiji, the independent state of Samoa, the federated state of Micronesia and Guam that has shown global leadership by being the first countries in the world to call for moratorium or ban on deep sea mining. These Pacific countries led the way, and recently they have been joined by New Zealand, Germany, and at this very COP by France, which is calling for a ban on deep seabed mining. Our ocean is our life. The oxygen of every second breath we take comes from the ocean and the land. It is also a carbon sink that protects us from global warming. We must protect its web of life from the deep sea and on the land foundation to the surface if we are to survive on this earth. Ban deep sea mining and land mining. Thank you.
Thank you, Cressida, for sharing those very insightful stories from your part of the world in Papua New Guinea and the difficulties with the industrial complex that works there. Now I would like to turn to Mr. Henri Rakotoson. Henri, could you please share with us again your insights on this question?
Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Henri. Je suis le vice-président de TAFNEAV. Et TAFNEAV, ça veut dire le réseau des communautés locales de gérer les ressources naturelles à Madagascar. Il était créé le 22 mai 2012. Nous avons beaucoup de membres parce qu'il y a 600 membres de l'association et les communautés locales de base. Nous avons une vision 2050, il faut que nous la reconnaisions dans son identité. Générie dans sa langue native comme personnalité morale. Suis à paix de ses richesses naturelles, sa dose à harmonie, à ses valeurs et gère les biens communs d'une manière durable. Et que son territoire de vie lui soit mutuellement avantageux dans tous ses échanges et ses interactions. À propos de ça, de notre vision, pour atteindre la vision, nous avons des 6 objectifs, des axes stratégiques pour les renforcer, la résilience climatique, l'atténuation de nos systèmes bioculturels dans notre communauté. Premièrement, reconnaître, auto-organiser, auto-renforcer les Fuknul ici, terroir de vie pour les restaurations et la durabilité des biodiversités, des richesses naturelles de leur bien-être. Deuxièmement, améliorer le niveau de vie, l'économie, l'autonomie financière et organisationnelle du Fuknul. Tous les utilisant d'une manière durable, les richesses naturelles étant intégrant consciemment l'autovalorisation mutuelle culturelle des terroirs de vie. Quatrièmement, arranger et coordonner la rédaction de la loi pour les Fuknul reconnus et définis légalement. Moteur de changement stratégique des bénéficiaires de les idées anticipées durables. Et ensuite, maintenir et défendre les pouvoirs, les droits, les devoirs des Fuknul et décider à s'autodéterminer et résoudre collaborativement les enjeux terroirs de l'avenir commun durable et des répartitions équitables des richesses nationales. Et cinquièmement, maintenir, renforcer et valoriser les connaissances malagasy sur les terroirs de vie, les richesses naturelles par les essences, les décisions des nouvelles, l'éducation mutuelle, les sensibilisations, appropriations, et enfin, réaliser les responsabilités, la mise en autonomie de tous les Fuknul, dont les plus démunis, les handicapés, les jeunes, les femmes dans la conservation. La gestion durable des richesses naturelles, les droits fonciers communautaires ou les Tampuknul, des succès. Ce sont les 6 objectifs pour lutte contre les changements climatiques. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Rakotoson. There are some very nice slides here that speak to your experience, and I appreciate hearing from you. I'd like to also now turn to Mr. Kuda for your experiences on climate resilience. Could you please share with us?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to be a part of you. And we are all constantly our footprints and many environmental impacts to come here and find a solution and sharing to each other to combat the environmental impact and climate change and for the solutions. And I'm very glad to share.
And I'm very excited. Hello. And I'm very excited to share what we are doing for our community and our community work on the ground level. If we want to talk about our resilience, our first basic requirement is food system and security. Without food system and security, we cannot combat our climate change without healthy situation. And to build up the food system, we need the very knowledge and practices from the indigenous people community. And to be able to secure the food system, and the indigenous people, they conserve the local seed, and we document the traditional way, how through their shifting cultivation and traditional cooking methods, which is very environment friendly and very eco-friendly. And we make a campaign to promote the local food products in the UN special days like World Food Day in their community to have a health accommodation and sharing to the younger generation how the local food product is very important and essential to build their community. And we also give them the financial support to uplift and promote their produce and public awareness for their local food product. Yes. And we have to support them through their livelihood support. And in livelihood support, we give them awareness raising and documentation and promoting of their traditional dresses. Like their traditional dresses come from their shielding cultivation. It is organic made from the tailoring and coloring with the tree barks in a seasonal manner. And to support them, we find markets for them and networking with the others to be able to be sustainable long term. And you know, through this, we can see that it is a carbon footprint. It is reducing the carbon footprints of the clothes production in another way. And we work for the indigenous people women. When we talk about the indigenous people women, we come to find out that the world comes to find out that they are a key role player in their community and the knowledge holders to their community to combat the climate change and environmental impact. And we networking to our regional level, and we share an exchange program in the regional level for the information and their practices and their knowledge. And we build their capacity building to participate in this kind of international community in a meaningful participation way, and as well as we give them the safety training and the legalism to be able to stand against the outsiders' approach and the conflict inflicts. And we also work with the indigenous people community for their community protocol to strengthen and promote their community existence. That is a very essential thing in terms of very many different ways, and it can also counter the outsiders' approach and exploit to their natural resources, which is very environmental impacting. Yes, that's all.
Thank you, Kuda, for your experiences, particularly working with women and in the communities. We appreciate all your efforts. Mr. Gregorio, could you please also now share your insights on how you are building climate resilience, mitigation, and strengthening biocultural systems in your community? ¿Pueden compartir con nosotros sus pensamientos sobre el cambio climático, la mitigación, adaptación y los sistemas bioculturales en vuestra comunidad?
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Estamos aquí como pueblos amazónicos, organizados en 9 países que tienen Amazonía. Y estamos en un momento muy difícil para la cuenca amazónica, pero también para la humanidad. Y nuestra experiencia se basa en que nosotros como pueblos ancestrales, originales, hemos mantenido nuestra identidad, hemos mantenido nuestra cosmovisión. Y es por eso que la selva amazónica sigue de pie. Sin los conocimientos indígenas, ya la defensa de los derechos de los pueblos indígenas y la fortaleza de las comunidades, ya no hubiera selva amazónica. Es por nosotros que está la selva amazónica de pie. Ahora. Ay, ahora sí. Estaba diciendo que si no luchamos, si no es por los conocimientos indígenas, la pandemia nos hubiese borrado del mapa. Nos salvamos con las plantas de la selva amazónica, con los conocimientos de los pueblos. Y lo hemos hecho por más de 10.000 años. Pero ¿cuál es el problema ahora? El problema ahora es que hay mucha inversión en la Amazonía para el petróleo, para la minería, para la invasión de tierras, para la madera ilegal. Y esas son las amenazas que tenemos en este momento. Entonces nosotros pedimos que se fortalezca todas las prácticas que tenemos como pueblos originarios. Las prácticas para conservar el agua, las prácticas para conservar los alimentos, las prácticas que tenemos para nuestra propia tecnología de navegar en el río, de hacer nuestra propia ropa, nuestro sistema de cacería, de pesca ancestral. Necesitamos apoyo para que eso no desaparezca, porque si no, nuestros bosques van a desaparecer. Pero también los países desarrollados tienen que dejar de invertir en petróleo, tienen que dejar de comprar carne que sale de la selva amazónica, el oro, el mercurio que llega allá. Tienen que evitar que sigan criminalizando y persiguiendo a los pueblos indígenas que defienden el territorio. Eso quiere decir que necesitamos implementar una estrategia conjunta, la ciencia, los aliados ambientales como WF que está acá, los gobiernos, pero necesitamos la participación plena y efectiva de los pueblos indígenas en esos planes, en la discusión, en la creación y en la implementación de los planes. Eso estamos pidiendo porque nosotros ya tenemos miles de años conservando el bosque. Necesitamos que nos apoyen. Los proyectos tienen que aprender de la sabiduría de los pueblos indígenas. No pueden venir proyectos a enseñarnos a nosotros cómo conservar la selva, porque lo sabemos. Los proyectos tienen que venir a fortalecer con la ciencia, con la parte técnica, con la parte financiera, pero es a aprender cómo nosotros hemos conservado por tanto tiempo la selva. Que nos enseñen la herramienta que necesitamos, pero el conocimiento indígena es milenario y ha sabido conservar la selva amazónica. Eso pedimos, que haya un equilibrio, que haya un apoyo y que podamos construir juntos ese plan que necesita la humanidad en este momento para salvar los bosques tropicales del mundo, no solamente la Amazonía, África, Asia, los mares, los océanos, el desierto. O sea, necesitamos un plan que incorpore los conocimientos de los hermanos que están aquí también. Eso sería un resultado genial en esta COP27.
Thank you, Gregorio, for very much underscoring the importance of protecting our Amazon, and also for linking, because we have a very global panel with us today, to all the landscapes and seascapes where we are working in the Pacific, in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America. So thank you for those important insights. Now I'd like to go to the second question that we have for our panelists today. And please, should you wish to also comment on each other's interventions, feel free to do so. So we'll start, maybe we can start at the end with Mr. Gregorio and work backwards. So for question number 2, I'd like to ask our panelists, noting that more can be done to strengthen and support the solutions to combat the changing climate and biodiversity loss, what factors were critical in building resilience, mitigation, and strengthening the biocultural systems in your communities? And what opportunities do you see, maybe for example in the People Protecting Landscapes and Seascapes initiative, in moving forward? Mr. Gregorio, I hope the translation worked and you can take the floor for this question.
Bueno, nosotros tenemos una propuesta, que es salvar la Amazonía en un 80%. Si eso no se hace, el planeta se va a quemar. Todos nos vamos a morir. Entonces, queda un 80% de la Amazonía que está viva. Si permitimos que se supere la deforestación en un 30-40%, estaremos al punto de no retorno. Entonces, ¿qué estamos haciendo? Tenemos un sistema de monitoreo ambiental, de alertas tempranas que se llama SAT-COICA, que lo estamos trabajando con ustedes, para ver las alertas de deforestación, de madera ilegal, de minería, de extracción petrolera. La estamos construyendo. Tenemos proyectos de reforestación del bosque con plantas y árboles de la Amazonía, no especies invasoras, sino con reforestación de las zonas degradadas. Tenemos proyectos con los jóvenes, con las mujeres. Tenemos un proyecto de economía indígena en un nivel muy básico, estamos iniciando, pero todo eso necesita apoyo técnico y financiero. Tenemos una resolución del Congreso Mundial de Áreas Protegidas que dice que todo el mundo debería apoyarnos, pero hasta el momento son muy pocos los que están apoyando. No, los que firmaron y aprobaron no están apoyando. La mayoría de los gobiernos no están apoyando. Entonces necesitamos eso, necesitamos el apoyo. Tenemos iniciativas de trabajar con el conocimiento ancestral en temas de plantas medicinales, economía, con las frutas, con la artesanía, con el turismo comunitario, que permita, que defienda que una economía que no destruya la selva. Eso estamos haciendo en este momento en diferentes países de la Amazonía, pero todo eso necesita fortalecimiento, necesita un apoyo. Entonces, el llamado es que a través de este espacio que nos están dando y que nos están apoyando también, podamos sumar a mucha gente a evitar ese punto de no retorno y que podamos tener una temperatura, que podamos tener agua, que podamos tener alimentos, no solo para nosotros, sino para la humanidad.
Thank you, Mr. Gregorio, for really outlining the needs that can be helpful to maintain and to support the efforts that you are undertaking in your community. Mr. Kuda, would you like to answer question number 2, please?
Yes, the first I would like to say it is support indigenous leaders and communities and peoples. They are the one who conserve the forest, and we can see them as essential inhabited for our solution for the crisis. We have to maintain uphold their existence while supporting their existence and protecting them from their rights. And in one occasion, they conserve the forest from the upstreams, and they have renewable energy and mini hydropower, and they are conserving the trees from their upstreams, and they are utilizing the energy in their village. And in the rainy seasons, they can share the energy to the other village and get a fan, and they can maintain and prepare the mini hydropower. In the summer, they cannot share, and so like they have a very friendly practices within their community, and because they conserve their forests and they know how to work with the renewable energy. So that is if we need to support them, the community leaders and the peoples and community leaders. Yes. And another is organic fertilizer. Nowadays we can see the inclining usage of chemical fertilizer that is have heavy impact to our agriculture and our environment, and we can even see the natural disorder, like it sometimes kills the pollinators. That is threatening our humanity. We can live, pollinators can live without human, but we human cannot live without pollinators. So, and the organic fertilizer like organic pesticides, they do not kill the pests or insects. They reduce the amount. They only draw away the pests that are only harmful to the plants. So we also give them to the training to the community that raise the awareness for the organic fertilizer. And we can also see that it utilizes the ingredients only for their organic sources like fruits within their community. So we can see that it reduces the carbon footprints in the area. Another one is chemical reduced soap products. And we are giving the trainings like that utilize the organic products from them. And it less harmful than the chemical products, like it does not affect contaminate the groundwater, sink and contaminate the groundwater. It is less harmful, and we can see that it also reduces the carbon footprints through giving the training and spreading the awareness to the community with the organic chemical reduced soap products for the community. Yeah, the last one is we need to bring more indigenous peoples to this COP, to this compound atmosphere, to share their conservative practices, stories that brings healthy effect to the environment, and their practices and their tradition and their essential knowledge that will contribute our combating with our climate crisis. Yeah, including indigenous people's youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuda, for highlighting that we need to support our Indigenous leadership, that we can use alternative organic fertilizers and non-chemical solutions, and that we can further support your participation, or that we hope to see you at more COPs, including Indigenous youth and Indigenous leaders. Thank you. Mr. Henri Rakotoson, would you like to answer question number 2?
Je vois qu'il y a beaucoup de problèmes, le changement climatique, mais je vois aussi qu'il y a une opportunité, y compris l'initiative des VVF, comme il y a encore des ressources naturelles qui peuvent être protégées et développées, et aussi on a beaucoup d'organisations impliquées dans la protection de l'environnement national et aussi international. Il existe également des accords internationaux et l'événement tel que le COP 27, comme le COP 15 CDB pour toujours rappeler les responsabilités que chacun doit prendre et pouvoir les échanges des bonnes pratiques. Et aussi les présences des peuples indigènes qui vivent et sont connectés à ces ressources naturelles et toute leur vie. Tous les États ont un plan pour lutter contre le changement climatique et les présences des systèmes de soutien tels que le VVF, le GFGP PNID et les divers ONG et fournisseurs qui favorisent l'environnement et lutte contre les changements climatiques. Et à propos de ça, les situations actuelles est que les dommages causés par les changements climatiques augmentent, de sorte que ces efforts et les soutiens devraient être doublés, surtout pour les soutenir les communautés locales et les peuples autochtones. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Henri Rakotoson, for sharing with us how we can further support Indigenous leaders in your communities. Ms. Cressida Koala, would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, Tracy. The land and the sea is our home. It's our home to human beings. we cannot let people just like us, to intervene and destroy our home. We have governments that are protecting our rights, and they are protecting our livelihood. And we know that we have the right to own the land and the sea. The space and the boundaries that are within our space, it is ours. The governments of the world must listen to the people who are owners of the land and the sea to come up with recommendations to support the ideas and the mind of the people who owns the land and the sea, so that our biodiversity, the living creatures in the oceans and in the forests, and people that live on the land and farm the land must survive without any pollution, air pollution or sea pollution that will reduce our livelihood to degradation. We are the people of the world. We have a government. Our government must listen to the people. If they are for the people and by the people and are representing the people, they must listen to the people. And the people of the world will come up with one standard mechanism to look after our sea and the land. Thank you.
Thank you, Cressida, for bringing your voice, a very unique voice, all the way from the Pacific. It must be very late in your local time zone, so thank you very much for sharing all those insights with us. I think that we have time for maybe one last round, maybe one last sentence or thought from our panelists on the discussions we've had today, and then maybe we have time to open the floor for a few questions. So, Cressida, would you be able to start maybe just with one final thought from what you've heard today on our panel?
My question goes to the observers and the panelists. If we own the land and the sea, why are not we negotiating with our government to come up with recommendations that will protect our lives on the land and protect our resources and protect the living creatures that live in the sea and on the land? Thank you.
Et mon remarque à propos des changements climatiques, je demande pour les parties prenantes qu'on va renforcer les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales parce que assez sont beaucoup de peuples et beaucoup de ressources naturelles.
Yes. All mechanisms should be bottom approach to be inclusive for indigenous people roles. And also in any project implementation, there should be FPIC, free prior info consent, to uphold and maintain their entire existence because they are the key players to the environment. So we have to give them more space, and I'm glad that and in this community in COP27 we can see more spaces for indigenous peoples. And we need to be more, we have to have more important roles in decision making and in the part of NDC and NAP in our country, in each country. And more like we need more IP youth internship program like exchange program, and because the IP youth people, they are the second generation that are about to witness the climate crisis. They are about to witness the climate crisis, and their roles become to play a very important role. And exchange program between youth and elders, because there's a communication gap because of the globalization and modernized living style. Like youth have to go to the downtown and the elders left behind. So there must be a relationship between them more, to give them more relationship and closer relationship and collaboration to combat the climate crisis, climate solution, and to work for the community and also contribute their voices to this international community. And we can see that there's many voices like we need immediate recognition. We need immediate recognition for IB peoples to uplift the healthy practices to our environment. Thank you.
Bueno, solamente preguntarles a todos aquí cómo vamos a hacer para que esta COP sea de implementación. Están diciendo que unidos por la implementación, por la acción. ¿Cómo vamos a hacer para lograr eso? Una de las cosas importantes es que los pueblos indígenas dejemos de ser observadores. Solamente somos, vean los carnets que tenemos, observadores de afuera, viendo. Pero somos nosotros los que estamos luchando contra el cambio climático día a día. Eso tiene que cambiar. Eso tiene que cambiar. Y lo otro, ¿cómo hacer? Quedan 10 años para resolver este problema. Yo creo que más allá de 10 años, si no hacemos algo concreto, vamos a tener más caos climático, vamos a tener más incendios, se va a acabar el agua, los alimentos. Tenemos que pensar cómo vamos a hacer. Y les invito a todos a buscar esas soluciones, juntos.
Thank you. We have a lot of diverse and important solutions that were presented today. I think we have time for at least one question from the floor.
Thank you very much for your sharing. I can really sense like the anger, the frustration, and as well as the passion for the desperate need for the conservation efforts, as well as fighting for climate injustice. Also, my name is Ryan. I'm from Hong Kong. It's also my first time at COP, so it's nice being here to hear about different voices from the vulnerable and indigenous communities. So my question goes to something about the current progress during COP27. I've heard from some of you sharing that you have involved in the international negotiations. So I was wondering, would you mind sharing your experience when you were in the negotiation room? Do you feel like your goals are being delivered? Do you think your voices are being heard when it comes to the loss and damage, when it comes to the global goals for adaptation? When you're trying to fight for your voices, do you think your voices really get into also get into their ears, and then your voices are actually being heard? If not, what do you think that should have been done for the ongoing COP or in the following years? Thank you.
I'm glad I don't have to answer that. Is there anyone on our panel that would like to answer that question?
Bueno, de la parte amazónica, nosotros, aquí es donde vemos a los ministros de ambiente, cada COP. Es bien difícil hablar allá en los países con ellos. Para hablar con un presidente de un país hay que venir a la COP, porque en su país no recibe a su gente, la mayoría de los presidentes. Entonces eso tiene que cambiar. Nosotros para hablar con nuestro presidente tenemos que hacer protestas, tenemos que cerrar las calles para que nos atiendan. Aquí en la COP, la mayoría de los presidentes están por allá, no atienden a la gente. Solo hemos hablado con un solo presidente aquí, que fue el de Colombia, que vino y salió a hablar con los pueblos indígenas ayer, antes de irse. Allá, no aquí, fue allá al pabellón indígena y se reunió con los indígenas. Eso queremos, que los presidentes no vengan a prometer aquí y luego se esconden de la gente. Queremos que den la cara, que busquen soluciones con nosotros. Eso tiene que cambiar también. Eso queremos para cambiar. Si queremos salvar este planeta, tenemos que cambiar todo. Naciones Unidas, los presidentes, los ministros, las empresas. Porque a los aliados de la sociedad civil, aquí están ustedes, aquí está WF. Ustedes están a la vista del público. Ustedes hablan con la gente. Ustedes ayudan a la gente. Pero ellos que tienen el poder todavía se esconden.
Thank you for that question. I think we have at least two more questions from the audience.
Thank you very much. This is Ladre from Myanmar, and I would like to congratulate all of the panel members for their very encouraging and very comprehensive, a very good thing doing in your national level. And I would like to suggest and recommend the international community, including WWF, International Conservation and Development Agency. For those who do not have the indigenous people policy, it's very important to adopt one of the indigenous related policy in the implementation of the projects, and to encourage the national government to respect and help the local community, indigenous people who are advocating for their national government, because then the rights of international development conservation agency are very important to influence the government policymaker and decision maker. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. I do believe WWF does have information relating to Indigenous peoples on our global policy, and I encourage everyone to check that out. And certainly on the international level, there is always more that can be done. I think there was one more question from the floor.
Muchas gracias. Cándido Pastor, de Bolivia. Mi pregunta, todos sabemos que el financiamiento para pueblos indígenas no está sucediendo, para financiamiento directo, y hay muchas promesas que están pasando. Mi pregunta a los representantes es, de este panel, ¿cuál es la prioridad número uno para que esto pase? ¿Qué es lo que deberíamos agendar para superar esta barrera del financiamiento hacia los pueblos indígenas?
Thank you, sir, for your question. From my point of view, it's a new knowledge horizon in my area. I come from a very small, isolated area in the mountains of Papua New Guinea. And our dialogue system with the government is not transparent. There are no dialogue system connected to, from a bottom-up level perspective. We heard about the climate fundings coming into our country from donor funding agency, but we don't know where the money is going. We have our government delegates here in the COP27, but they are not with us. That might be the reason why we don't have funding coming into. We have places to be revegetated. We need our savanna grassland to be revegetated after mining impact. We have our seas that needs to be revegetated. We need to plant new corals on our seas, in our seas. We have to farm fishes. But we don't know where the money is going. Our governments are not transparent to the people from the bottom level. Thank you.
Thank you for all those interesting questions. I think it's clear that we don't have enough time today to cover all the topics that we've raised in sufficient detail. But I encourage you to check out the WWF YouTube channel, where we will post this video, as well as any additional information related to this session. So I'd like to thank our panelists for their insights, for the audience here for your engagement, for the audience online, for the interpreters and the staff that were supporting this session, and to all of you for your good work that you're doing in these very challenging circumstances. Today's discussion was illuminating, and I appreciate the points that the panelists have offered. I hope it was also informative to our audience. The discussions here are clearly not over, and we need to take these profound issues into our work when we're moving forward. For me and my team, we have been taking careful notes throughout the session, and we hope that it will inform our work in the PPLS for next steps. We all need to think about how to respond to the needs that were clearly highlighted today in the various communities in terms of rights, safe space, and dialogue. And we need to remain focused on these important issues and take these actions into our development of policies, resources, and merging our experiences with the expertise presented from our panelists today. There will be other related talks at the pavilion during this COP and in other spaces as well. So I encourage you all to continue work in this area and engagement. and I invite you to contact me should you need to know anything further about this session. So I'd like to close the session for now, and thank you very much for joining.